everyone, and welcome to another game of World of Warships. Today's replay is from Valkyrie, and he's in a Des Moines, a Tier 10 US cruiser. He is on the map charts. It's a 3-point domination game. Tier 10 battle with Valkyrie, no sub and only one destroyer. Now it's rare to see so few destroyers in a battle. It also means that there won't be many raider targets, which is a shame. That's probably also why Valkyrie is a little bit more here in the open and not parking next to an island. If you're sitting there right next to the camp, you can ambush destroyers relatively easily. But there is no destroyer here. We have already seen the Benson at the sea camp. Speaking of the sea camp, the friendly Fantask is way too aggressive, especially since the team is not really backing it up. I mean, sure, we have quite a few ships up there actually, but they aren't like that close to the sea camp. And the Fantask is kinda trapped, right? If it stayed on the friendly side, it could easily escape back to some ships. Oh, meanwhile, enemy Hindenburg here has decided to go broadside. I mean, it tried to get behind an island, but how is that broadside turning out for it? Wait for it. There we go. Well, I mean, going broadside in front of two Vladivostoks was not the winning move, it turns out. Anyway, Fantask at sea has been taken out. Unsurprisingly, it was overextended without any help. Now the good news is, there are still quite a few friendly... Oh, and there goes the starting drop. Okay, so now the raider is down, the destroyer is down. The friendlies have really screwed it up at the sea camp. But you know, game is still young. A lot of things can happen. For example, the friendlies can push the A side. The enemy here is down to 3 ships. And they aren't even the most powerful ones, right? 2 tier 8s and a tier 9. So the friendlies can easily go in and hopefully take that. Which is exactly what the Golden Lion and 1 Vladivostok are doing. The Moines is taking an interesting approach, and the other Vladivostok is retreating for whatever reason. Now let's increase the speed slightly while Valkyrie is also making his way into the camp. Now unfortunately there isn't a great position here for a Des Moines to hide behind an island. Simply because all the enemies are in cover, well, between relatively high islands. Also I suppose this won't be a long drawn out fight here, it's just gonna be a push. Well, those troops are somewhat easily dodged. Of course, they were meant for the Vladivostok, I suppose. Anyway, North Carolina is shootable. The carrier is coming back in for another drop. But who is he targeting? He is targeting the Vladivostok again. Speaking of Vladivostoks, the second one has not turned around and come back in. It's going for the center. I mean, not necessarily a bad move, because the enemy is probably going to push there. Might be able to create a crossfire. I suppose that Vladivostok is hoping that the friendlies here have enough ships to sink those enemies. Of course, see, technically it was a 5 versus 3, but if the Vladivostok isn't around and the Moines is so far in the back, it sort of turns into a 3 versus 3. So the friendlies might be losing their advantage around here. Then again, the enemies are on relatively low health right now. Now, speaking of health, we have a rather healthy Vladivostok going for the Hipper, but Hipper does have torpedoes, and that's a very risky move coming around the island like that Vladivostok is doing. Meanwhile, Valkyrie is engaging a Friedrich, and he's in secondary range. Not the most comfortable place to be. Okay, so the Hipper has been taken out, but give me a second. How healthy is that Vladivostok? Yeah, that Vladivostok probably ate a lot of troops. So, good news, the Friedrich is going down. The bad news is, I think that Vladivostok is not gonna survive the North camp. Meanwhile, the Vladivostok in the north here is coming back. Now it's a bit too late, because this engagement is basically over, so it should more likely park nose in towards the sea cap, maybe be next to this island. It could take this cap, mind you. It's not like anything is going to stop it. Sit there, maybe in this camp, nosing towards those enemies, help create a crossfire or something. Like, coming down here south is utterly pointless. Meanwhile, Valkyrie is charging the north camp. The Vladivostok we had around here is dead. And the carrier is coming in here. Well, that's going to be a lot of fish. What a nice little balanced carrier, isn't it? So Valkyrie was punished for existing. And at least the north camp is down. Now the carrier could come back in and do the same thing. This island severely limits the way Valkyrie can maneuver, so the carrier just has to come in from the one side where, you know, Valkyrie is open. Instead, the carrier drops in from the front, where he can't really do much, because, you know, he's even dropping half of his torpedoes into the island, and that can't even arm in time. So, good news, the carrier is not really competent. Bad news, it still managed to take a large chunk of Valkyrie's health in the earlier drop. So, now all the friendlies are assembled today, except for the Minnesota. And the enemies have the points, the caps, and the ships. Yeah, this could be going better. Well, let's unlock the camera and speed it up slightly while Valkyrie is moving into position to engage the remaining enemies. Now, the Benson is at the center. Maybe Valkyrie will even be able to use his radar at some point. But the good news is, we see quite a few lower health enemies. Well, also lower health friendly. So, a Bismarck is coming into a shootable position. Let's see. It's a Bismarck, it's suitably on fire. Valkyrie is going for some armor piercing, cause it's not that well angled. The good news is a Bismarck only has a 380mm gun, so it can't even overmatch a Des Moines nose. So unless it's in secondary range, a Bismarck isn't that scary. I mean, obviously it can still Citadel at Des Moines if Des Moines isn't angled, and it can still get some very damaging penetrations anyway. But no overmatch just makes it a lot easier to deal with. Meanwhile, it wouldn't be World of Warships if somebody in the team wouldn't start crying right now. Despite the fact that this game is far from over. I mean, yes, the enemy is in the lead, but just look at it. There are two very low health ships that can hopefully be quickly dealt with. See, there is one. Now the Neptune is dead as well. And suddenly the friendlies are even a ship ahead. The point difference isn't that big anymore suddenly, and B is close enough to be flipped soon. Now the Benson is retreating, which is a shame, so it's not gonna wait around for Valkyrie to radar it. Well, we have the, let's have a look around. That Moines is very healthy, that's nice. The Golden Lion, less so. Golden Lion is probably not gonna make it for much longer if the Arch has shots at it. And the Marlborough is there as well. So, still equal on ships, mind you. Well, okay, not anymore. But you know, like 3 versus 4 is not the end of the world. The biggest issue is the enemy has 2 battleships and the friendly team has 2 cruisers. Well, there is also the Benson. The enemy team certainly has the better ship composition remaining, because the battleships can threaten the cruisers and the destroyer can go for the objectives. But you know, maybe the Benson can be ambushed. It depends on how... oh, the Benson is in the cap. Oh, you are so gonna regret this. Now this is the time where the Benson should really be panicking. Or, you know, it could try to come in for a torpedo YOLO. Now Hydro is still running for a little bit. Benson is not turning into a position where it can actually pull off a YOLO, but instead is turning away and it's getting utterly wrecked. Now, I don't think the Benson would have had the time to come around here. Valkyrie was wisely sailing in a way to not expose himself to fish. I mean, honestly, the Benson could have tried stopping behind this island, or reversing, or, you know, coming around in a tight angle or anything. But that's all good news for the friendlies here. So we are in a 3 versus 3. Valkyrie can drop into concealment here and take the camp. Or he can keep shooting the Marlboro. I think, personally, I would have gone for concealment here. Taking the B cap here seems very important. Then again, he's going into cover anyway. So, I suppose it's all working out here. The friendlies are once again a ship ahead, with the enemy destroyer being dealt with. The enemy team doesn't have an easy way to flip capture zones anymore. The Marlboro is way too far in the back to do much about objectives. So is the enemy carrier. Now the question is, how do you play this? There is still, well, 5.5 minutes left. Your friendlies could try to hunt down the Marlboro. Of course, it's a battleship. Then again, Marlboro had, I think, very low caliber guns, shooting high explosive. I think Marlboro was relatively low caliber, so it doesn't have the overmatch. And if a battleship doesn't have the overmatch, it makes open water gunboating it a lot safer. Of course, that's still an awful lot of guns on the Marlboro, and you know, it can still do damage. It can also go to high explosive and set fires. But you can see, like, that armor-piercing salvo didn't do an awful lot because it can't overmatch the Des Moines, and it didn't find an angle to penetrate. Now the friendly carrier is obviously helping with the Marlboro. Not like there are many other targets remaining. The Moines is going for the sea camp for the objectives. I mean, Moines is a squishier ship than a Des Moines. And as I said, I'm not quite sure what the Moines armor is. I'm not quite sure what the Marlboro gun caliber was. So the Moines might just be way too vulnerable to go into the open. But it looks like Valkyrie together with the carrier are doing a great job, and Valkyrie is exposing a little bit too much of his broadside here, honestly. But Valkyrie has managed to sink the Marlboro and unleash the Kraken. At this point, it's gonna be very hard for the enemy carrier to win. I mean, sure, and still sink Valkyrie, but there is too much time left. Sinking one ship isn't going to be enough for the carrier to win if the friendlies have 2 camps. The Moines is gonna flip C. It also looks like somehow the Roosevelt managed to run out of planes, which is a pretty hard thing to do for a Roosevelt, but the enemy carrier managed. So we have a lovely dodge here, and maybe Valkyrie can get even close enough. Get a piece of that carrier. Carrier is hacking the zone wall, as one would expect, I suppose. Now, of course, the problem is, as you can see, that's zone penetrations. The deck of a carrier is too well armored, so you can't penetrate the deck. And at this range, it's hard to hit anything but the deck, because, you know, launching fire. The fires don't really work against the carrier. So while Valkyrie can shoot the ship, his only hope is to either hit like below the sides somewhat, or that little bit of superstructure that there is. And there are some hits that managed to not hit the deck. It's it's a long process, but he's getting a little bit of damage in. I mean, the closer he gets, the more likely he can hit a part of the carrier that's penetrate. That he's able to penetrate. Anyway. 2 minutes remaining. The friendlies are going to win this at this point. Even if they lose Valkyrie, the carrier can't do anything anymore. Well, it's doing a good job of surviving, right? You can see Valkyrie's aiming here low, hoping to get the shots just like into that little bit of bow piece here, or here in the sides underneath the tank. And hey, there's a Confederate. It's not like the carrier was even that healthy, it's just... Ooh, Valkyrie is taking a big hit here. But hey, eventually you'll sink the carrier, right? Oh, there is a fire. It will burn for what, like 3 seconds? So, in the end, justice has been served. The enemy carrier is no more. And Valkyrie earned himself quite a lot of base experience. 2,779. Very well done, my friend. Of course, he only shot down 16 planes because, you know, he's a Des Moines. And Des Moines aren't very good against aircraft, unfortunately. Anyway, this was an exciting battle. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. And I'll see you next time.